Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and there's no intro meme today because the comedy is going to be provided by a reply to one of my tweets that I put out yesterday. So this tweet it's not toxic, but it certainly, I think, represents the average sentiment for people on crypto Twitter at the moment. Take a look at this, right? I post a video, as I always do, every day to Twitter, and I get told that the time is running out for a left translated cycle. So I said, says who? The left translated cycle would be technically qualified if it's any time before November. Remember, a left translated cycle simply means the top comes before the halfway point. So in a 4-year cycle, that's any time before 2 years. And given that the bear market low was in November of 2022 during the FTX collapse, the top, should it appear any time before November of this year, means that we technically have a left translated cycle. That's all it is, right? And then, correct, every day that goes by is 1 day closer to November. Time is running out. And then he goes on to say, it shows how emotionally invested you are in this idea. I mean, is this not projection? Are you not projecting your emotions onto me? This is the average person that we're up against in the markets. I'm not sure that being in January means necessarily that we're running out of time since the deadline is November, but I'll let you guys be the judge of that. So with that comedy out the way, okay, I think what I'm going to do is just what I always do. I'm just going to try to be as objective as possible, try to look at the charts without bias, try to have a plan and stick to it until the market proves me wrong, and hopefully we can learn something either way, okay? Because remember, I don't care if I'm right or wrong, I just want to be on the right side of the market, okay? I have nothing to prove. A lot of people seem to think that somehow I want a left translated cycle top because then I can put my name on it and say, yeah, this is Camel's idea, Camel called the left translate. That's not what it's about. If we're going to have a left translated cycle, I just want to sell my Bitcoin before we enter the bear market prematurely. I don't want to be having my eyes focused on a right translated cycle that comes at the end of next year and then the market actually top sometime this year. Okay, that's all it is. It's not so I can have bragging rights. So remember, I don't actually want a left translated cycle. I've said this a million times. I want a right translated cycle. If we get a right translated cycle, it will be easier to deal with. It will be way easier to sell the top at, and we'll get a higher number. All right, if we left translate, that means we're going to have less gains than if we right translate. Generally speaking, that's how cycles work. So I would rather be proven wrong on this. So, but like I said, I can only have a plan and stick to it until the market proves me otherwise. Again, a lot of people are quick to jump at me and say, ha, invalidated. But you know, you either didn't pay attention 5 days ago, or again, you're projecting your own emotions onto me, okay? So let's just take this one step at a time. I'll try and be as objective as possible. Remember, I'm only human and I don't claim to know anything, okay? I'm just taking this one day at a time. The only thing I know is that I don't know. I don't know how I can say this every episode, and yet people still think somehow that all I really care about is having this ego to say, ha, I told you so, okay? There's no use in watching the world burn and say, I told you so, okay? And nobody benefits from that. So, look, FTX is the rug that keeps on rugging. What does this mean? Well, it turns out that $1 billion of the selling we've seen from GBTC was actually FTX liquidators, as has been reported as of yesterday. So a third of the total outflows from GBTC is actually FTX liquidators taking what they can, taking what's left of this insolvent exchange. And this, of course, changes the picture entirely. That means, one, that the selling is now completely done. Okay, and two, we might actually get a bounce which could trigger a massive short squeeze because everyone's so confident that this is Wyckoff distribution or that this cycle is no different to any other cycle and therefore we have to have a big correction now down to 32k, and that's entirely possible. I have consistently said that is possible if we lose 40k and we take out that cycle low, which we did officially yesterday. So anything and everything is on the table, but you know, new information is coming to market, and if that new information is that $1 billion of this was because of FTX liquidators, and that is now done, doesn't that remove quite a large portion of the dark grey cloud that was hanging over Bitcoin? It's also worth observing a few things, okay? Bitcoin is down, but the crypto miners are up. Now, that's more likely because they're actually more correlated to the stock market than Bitcoin at times. Anyway, that is a piece of information that is not of a debate, right? That's just a fact. The CME gap has been filled now for those people that wanted those gaps filled at 39.5. Now, a lot of people are quick to say all gaps fill, and you know, that's not really true, okay? If you just Google what percentage of CME gaps fill, then, you know, that's a piece of research for you to go and enlighten yourself on. Another fact is this FTX bankruptcy liquidation led to $1 billion in selling yesterday, or excuse me, since the ETF launch, and that makes up somewhere between a third and 50% of GBTC outflows. So that's significant. That is significant, especially now that that selling pressure is removed. That's done now. That's out the way. Short-term holder realized price at 38.4 is only another 3% from current price, and we should see that area defended at least in the short term. And we've had the hash rate 7-day moving average now 12% off its all-time high, which most likely means we're going to see minor capitulation not too far in the future. All of this, of course, aligns with a cycle low that we know is due in around 2.5 weeks, okay? And a little bonus here as well is that the fees for Bitcoin are the lowest point since November. So overall, more of that is bullish than bearish. And again, I know a lot of people are going to be overly emotional about the price, but just stick with me, okay? Just stick with me. It's really not as bad as people are making out. And this is the message, right? The too long didn't read is people just need to man up and buy the dip, okay? Prior bull markets had 30% drops on the way to 100x. Absolutely true. We're only about 20% down and we haven't had any 30, 40 or even 50% corrections yet. So anyway, if you're blowing your account up on a price change from 42 to 38k, then, that's on you. So what does this actually mean for the charts? Okay. 5 days ago, you can see down the bottom left, 5 days ago I posted this. And honestly, nothing has changed, okay? So it's no good calling me emotional. It's no good projecting your toxicity or anger or whatever onto me because I'm not even going to say anything different. I'm just going to play you this clip, okay? This is what I said 5 days ago, and this absolutely stands true today. So let's make this really clear. If we lose this, okay, after printing a failed cycle, then I am saying 100% certain in myself that we are not having a left translated blow off top to new highs. The reason I said earlier is it's kind of complicated. It's not as simple as black and white. Is if we were to print a short-term failed cycle here, but then hold this, right? There's still a possibility that we could get a left translated cycle top, meaning, of course, by definition, the top comes before November. So whilst that would be wildly later than I am kind of expecting to see in this orange fractal, right? This orange fractal kind of predicts that we're going to top before the halving. And local invalidation or short-term invalidation, as I said, comes from printing a failed cycle. But you could see, we could still do this yellow thing here, right? And still put in a blow off top, still top before the midpoint. And thus, we would still have a left translated cycle, even if invalidation occurs here. So this isn't hard invalidation. This is what, let's term it soft invalidation, okay? This is what I would call a significant warning sign if we were to print a failed cycle and close below this red horizontal. So there you have it, okay? A significant warning sign. We closed below that. We've had soft invalidation. So it doesn't mean I'm running out of time. We've got all the way until November. It doesn't mean that this is 100% invalidated. It doesn't mean that I'm wrong, okay? Because I never knew, all right? So can everyone take a deep breath? It's going to be fine, okay? For now, though, the facts are the facts. We have had soft invalidation, right? How can we complete this fractal if we've had soft invalidation? So for now, it tells us to be open to more downside. That's what a failed cycle tells us. We just printed a failed cycle, meaning we undercut the original low. It also means we've possibly got the weekly count wrong, and we're going to have to go to Bob Lucas's count. I'll show you that in just a minute. And unfortunately, it's not as black and white as saying, well, here's what comes next, right? Standard 4-year stuff, and then a right translated cycle. Because as I said in this video 5 days ago, that yellow squiggle could still yield a left translated cycle. So we can't fully rule it out yet. Although it is, of course, as I said in this video as well, significantly less likely now that we have printed a failed cycle. So taking a good look at this move, right? In 2016, 618 rejection, 30% correction before a move higher. Same again in 2019, 618 rejection, 30% pullback before a move higher. And right now we've had the 618 rejection. That was what Blockchain Backer was talking about. We're 20%-ish down. A 30% pullback would put us somewhere between 34 and 35k. And then we should be able to resume up. It's also possible that this correction is actually done, okay? Now, I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it's possible that what we do is come out of here and complete this expanded flat pattern. Now, if we did that, it's worth pointing out that we need a cycle low somewhere in this neighborhood. So that tells me even if we did this, we probably still need to roll over one more time. Whether we double bottom with that low, make a higher low or a lower low is of course to be determined. There's no way of knowing. But if we did do something like this, then we probably still would need to roll over one more time because cycle lows are cycle lows, right? They need to be put in, they need to be found. And so hopping into the charts, what's really different? What do we know? Have we learned anything? And of course the answer is yes, right? First of all, we're stopped out of this position. That's fine. Second of all, this is probably not happening as it stands right now. And third of all, we of course have a failed cycle, which means we possibly have this weekly count mislabeled. Now, Bob Lucas has this as the weekly count. The reason I didn't like this as a weekly count is 18 is pretty early. 18 is pretty early, but it certainly seems that by moving this blue arrow down here, we now have a more valid count. It possibly also means that we're either going to find this weekly cycle low here or here at the next daily cycle. Bob Lucas probably had the count right here. That's fine because look, we've learned something, right? We've learned that this is the new count, which means the weekly cycle should form somewhere between one of these next two daily cycles. we've also said multiple times, if we lost that low, right, where would be a very, very logical place to come down to? And of course, it would be this green level here, which of course would be the back test of the 32k range. That would be very logical. Now, do we get it or not? That's to be determined. I kind of lean on the idea that that would be too much of a gift. But also, look, if we were to come down and undercut that slightly and then bounce out of this cycle low, that would be a perfect touch off of this upward sloping red support line. So all of this would still be bullish structure. And then it goes back to what I was saying back here. That squiggle in yellow, we could still see that happen. We could have this failed cycle, the pullback to the red upward sloping support line, find that daily cycle, and then move higher. That would also form probably the new weekly cycle at the end of March. And then happy days, right? Long and strong, continue to push, still leaves the left translated cycle on the table. And of course, it also still leaves the right translated cycle, because maybe we just do this, right? Maybe we do this, maybe we go sideways, and then we start a parabola much later. So everything and anything is still on the table. We haven't really learnt a great deal other than this is a new proposed count in blue for the weekly cycle. We've also learnt that we have got a failed daily cycle, and the failed daily cycle tells us to expect further downside until that next cycle low. So now it's just a case of seeing how low does it go? Can we stay patient until we get down to this cycle low wherever it forms? Or do we see some kind of major upset? Because even though this is a failed cycle, there's nothing to say that we don't bounce back up here, because that would really upset everyone, right? Everyone was super bearish in here, and I know this because all I kept saying every day is lose this cycle low, and then it's time to be bearish. But all the time we're holding above it, then it's bullish bias. And I was getting an awful lot of people saying, no, it's bearish, it's distribution, it's this, it's that, it's the other. And fine, now it's broken down, we can say, yes, it was. But that also means a whole heap of people will probably be shorting this move. And with FTX out the way now, possible higher inflows from the ETFs, and a whole heap of shorts to set on fire, I wouldn't be overly surprised if we were to bounce back up here and then come down and undercut, right? Because that way everyone suffers. The shorts go, ha, told you so. They get scorched. The bulls go, ha, told you so. We've recovered the range. They get scorched into the cycle low. Everyone gets wrecked. And then we can start again from there, right? That kind of, that wouldn't surprise me. For now, though, being as objective as possible, the facts are the facts. We've lost the cycle low. This is a failed cycle, and it tells us that we have bearish implications on our way down to that next cycle low. The weekly cycle count, as I said, is also up for debate, because we could easily see this form the weekly cycle low, a cycle inversion, or we might have to do one more consolidation or even downward cycle into that next weekly cycle low. So we could end up with something much more like this. This is also now on the table. Okay, so that's what we've learned. If the market is to reverse and recover this range, then we would have learned something new, right? Then we would have learned that this was actually a bear trap, this was actually a stop run, and the thing is more bullish than most people can even imagine. If we continue to move down like this, then we can say, well, that was to be expected. We learned once we lost the cycle low. So either way, we're learning something day by day here. As always, open to being proven wrong, open to staying on the right side of the market. I suspect we probably build some structure out, right? Meaning we probably do something like this into that cycle low for a nice 2 drives pattern, even though Bitcoin doesn't like the 2 drives pattern very much. Probably be able to draw a trend line and add the long back on a breakout, right? Something like this. I bet we'd be able to do something like this. That seems perfectly reasonable to me. So this is the new plan, and it's right until it's wrong. Of course, we don't have to zigzag from here. We could easily just continue to bleed down something like this and then bounce. But either way, we're not that far away from the cycle low, are we? We're not that far away. So ultimately, not a great deal has changed, right? We lost the cycle low, and we always said if we lost the cycle low, then that would tell us to expect further downside into the next cycle low, which as it stands right now is currently around 18 sessions away. And of course, once we find that cycle low, then it will be time to try to figure out, are we just going to have some kind of left translated cycle and roll over one more time into another cycle low? Or is this thing going to get super, super bullish, do something like this? And then is that left translated cycle still on the table? So as it stands right now, right, there's a time to be in the market, there's a time to be out of the market, there's a time to go fishing. When you know what's going on, you can be in the market and then you can put your feet up on the desk, right? Right now we're in a time where we don't really know what's going on. So we have to get a read. We have to let the market show us a few more candles. We have to stay patient. Okay, I'm not going to be getting long here or trying to short here or trying to get cute. Just wait for the cycle low, and then we'll go back to adding our exposure back. Once we get a significant move, we can talk about moving stops up as always. Once again, the facts are the facts, right? It was impossible for me to be bearish above that cycle low. Now we got a failed cycle low. It's kind of impossible for me to be bullish until we at least recover it. But even if we did, we know that cycle low should form lower down than we are currently. That's just how failed cycles work. So how low is anybody's guess, but the number one thing we can do here is be patient. And just remember, it's not that bad. It's not as bad as people were making out. We're only about a week away now from the end of this month. And remember, at the end of this month, that should be the show for the DXY to tell us whether or not it's going to roll over. So things could get pretty ugly for Bitcoin if we get to the end of the month and clear this high in this horizontal from back here at around 104 and change, right? If we were to clear that, things might get pretty ugly for Bitcoin. But if we get to the end of the month and we see this rollover, this breakdown, like this yellow squiggle suggests, then we have an opportunity here to say the 3-year cycle low is not in. This, of course, the Dixie rolling over is typically conducive to higher Bitcoin prices. So it's all to play for still. And the only way you can really lose here is to allow your emotions to get the better of you, right? Admit you don't know. Admit I don't know. and that's it. We'll take it one day at a time, right? As always, there's been plenty of times when I've had a very solid read on the markets, and there's been plenty of times when I have no clue what's going on. Right now, it's impossible for me to know, right? It was very easy until we failed the cycle. Now we got a failed cycle. You know, I'm not going to repeat myself, but the thing to do here is to be patient. There will come a time, whether it's in days, weeks, or months, there will come a time when I know exactly what's going on again. And when I do, we'll start to add positions back and we'll be able to continue to capture the bulk of this move. I'm sure there's really no change in a great deal of these charts. The stock market's still rocketing higher. Happy days there. The big thing I was talking about yesterday was I wanted to see the Russell 2K breakout, right? I didn't want to see divergence because last time we saw the divergence, meaning the stock market made higher highs whilst the Russell 2K and the small caps made lower highs. Last time we saw that, it marked the top, right? Before we entered the bear market of 2022. So yesterday I was saying I didn't want to see us form a lower high and then get rejected at resistance and roll over. So far, so good, right? We got the breakout. Now we want to see this follow through. And if we can do that, I really do think we can breathe a sigh of relief in the short term. We're also seeing the crypto-related equities. They're holding up relatively well, aren't they, right? They're holding up relatively well. But again, we're still looking for these things to build structure into that cycle low. Not a great deal has changed, right? Still looking to build structure into that cycle low and then get long on trendline breaks and add positions. So really not a lot else to say. Of course, with this new information the market has just given us, we have to be open to seeing another full daily cycle of downside into that weekly cycle low. But look, even Bob Lucas is kind of agreeing with me, right? Here's the 32k range retest. He suggests that we don't even quite touch it, do we, right? Maybe is somewhere in the neighborhood of 34, 35k, which isn't a whole heap of downside, is it? In my humble opinion anyway. So as ever, one day at a time, see what the market can give. You know, it's not really the end of the world just yet, is it? I think, you know, lose 32k and then we can start to say, okay, something is really off here. It's time to go back to completely neutral and even look for shorts. But all the while we're above 32k, then we're just building ranges and working our way out of them, right? And to illustrate exactly what I mean by that, you know, we built a range, right? Breakout, retest, resumption. If we come back to 32k and continue resumption, then all we've done is build a range, break it out, retest it, build a range, right? Break it out, retest it, build a range, break it out, retest it. So nothing out of the ordinary there. However, if, like I said, we do start to lose the 32k level, if we came back down here and then started to do something like this, well, okay, now we've built a range, broken out, and then failed to hold it, right? We failed to move off. So at this level now, 32k, below there, and we start to get concerned, start to get actually bearish. Camel starts to say, I'd rather be short Bitcoin than long Bitcoin. But all the while, you know, really, if we're zoomed out like this, just look at that chart, okay? What do you see? Not a great deal. Now, yeah, I know this is the BLX and that won't update, and when it does update, the price will be somewhere in this neighborhood. But is that the end of the world? Not really, not at this stage. So I hope that clears that up. I hope you're not too upset about this current move. Just admit you don't know anything. It makes it a lot easier. One day at a time as always. And for all we know, we're going to be back at 42k tomorrow. Again, I'm not saying we are. I'm just saying, for all you know, we might be. This is Bitcoin after all. So until next time, I'm your boy Camel. I hope you're doing well in life. Take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.